By gosh, if the Indiana Hoosiers can win a national championship in football, then so can the West Virginia Mountaineers. That is the argument among many in the West Virginia fan base. Is that an accurate argument? Well, I'm going to give you both sides of the argument. The fact that they are not on the same level as Indiana, but I'm also going to give you the argument as to why they are. Then I'm going to give you my opinion at the end. But let's have that conversation right now. What is up, and welcome into this episode of Couz's Corner, your home for top shelf college sports talk surrounding the West Virginia Mountaineers and sometimes the Big 12. We all know the story about Indiana, going from 3-9 2 years ago to now winning a national championship as a 16-0 undefeated team, thanks in large part to hiring the right coach in Curt Cignetti. Hats off to him and what he's able to do. Arguably the greatest turnaround in sports history at any level. What Curt Cignetti's been able to do, taking a doormat program like Indiana and taking them to the top, the tip top of the sport. And it has many in Mountaineer Nation talking about, well, Couz, if Indiana can do it, a team who's never been the brand that West Virginia has been, if they can do it, then why can't West Virginia do it? And that's a fair argument. And in a minute, I'll tell you why that is a fair argument. But right now, I'm going to tell you the one reason that West Virginia may not be on the same level as Indiana, and it really revolves around one thing, and that's this: cold, hard cash, money, pocket. How deep are the pockets? Let's first take a look at the fact that Indiana is in the Big Ten Conference. They're making about $75 million a year all in on their media deal, maybe even more than that. That's just an estimate. Whereas in West Virginia, the Big 12 is estimated to make about $50 million a year from their TV deal. That $25 million gap alone is enough to pay off their revenue share that they have to pay to their athletes of $20.5 million. Now, there is an asterisk there. The Big Ten does sponsor more sports than the Big 12. It's my understanding that Big Ten schools sponsor 24 varsity sports, whereas West Virginia specifically, based on my research, are only sponsoring 18. Now, does it cost $25 million a year to sponsor an additional 18 sports? Maybe so. I don't know. Somebody from the Big Ten, if you're listening to this, chime in and let me know. But I doubt it. I doubt it takes $25 million to sponsor 6 more sports. So Indiana has an advantage there. And then let's take a look at where I think they have an even bigger advantage. Let's talk about how many donors they have. Let's talk about money coming in from outside third-party entities. Most of that money comes from where? From alumni, right? Well, it just so happens Indiana has the largest alumni base in the entire country. Based on my research, over 800,000 living alumni. 800,000. That's 4 times more than what West Virginia has. Their living alumni base is about 200, a little over 200,000. That's a lot more people who are able to donate or willing to donate. Now, you have people like me in the fan base who aren't necessarily alums of the school, but who might still give. And I'm sure, but here's the thing: I'm sure Indiana has some of those people too. And even with that, I still don't think West Virginia is able to close the gap with what people like to call Walmart fans, like me, who just root for the team because it's our home state school. There are not enough of us to fill that gap, a 600,000 people gap. At least I don't think there are. Because, again, I'm sure Indiana has some of those quote-unquote T-shirt fans too, or Walmart fans too, who only support them because it's their home state school or for other reasons. Maybe they had a family member that went there, whatever. But point of the story is Indiana has a lot more people who can donate and who will donate. And let's go a step further. Let's talk about their biggest, most wealthy donor. Who is it in Indiana but Mr. Mark Cuban, a man who, according to my research, is worth over $6 billion with a B. West Virginia's most notable wealthy alum, at least wealthiest that I'm aware of anyway, is Mr. Ken Kendrick, the owner of the Arizona Diamondbacks. His net worth, a little over $1 billion. That's a $5 billion gap. Now, I don't think either man is giving, $4 to $5 billion. I don't know how much Cuban's giving, and I don't know how much Kendrick's giving. I'm sure it's a lot. But long story short, Mark Cuban's, if he's willing, is able to give more money than Ken Kendrick is, more than likely, because he's worth 5 times more money. And again, those are not, it's not apples to apples, but you get my point here. My point is this: Indiana, as a school, as a program, as a football team, has more money available to them than does West Virginia University as a football program, as a school, so on and so forth. That's the reason that West Virginia fans should not have the same expectation out of Rich Rodriguez that they do Curt Cignetti. It's not going to be a 2-year turnaround. But now, what about the fans who say, but Couz, Indiana is not an Ohio State. They're not a Michigan. They're not a Texas A&M or a Texas. They don't have that kind of money. And that's right, they don't. So now let's go into the side of the argument that West Virginia can win a national championship like Indiana. Indiana has nowhere near the brand power, at least historically. Let's go historically now, not present day, but historically, does not have the football brand that West Virginia does, and I would agree with that. And that is something West Virginia has used in the past and can use in recruiting. The problem is the young kids they're recruiting today, it's getting to the point where they're not going to remember West Virginia as a legit brand anymore because it's been several years since we've been there. Or since, I shouldn't say we, I guess. I'm a fan, I say we a lot. But since the team, the program has been there, they're starting to get out of that window where people are going to remember them as a top brand anymore. But historically, you still see them posting the Tavon Austin photos in their commitment tweets or their offer tweets or whatever. So fans do still recognize West Virginia as a good brand. High school kids, too, for that matter. But it's not like it used to be, let's face it. But historically, West Virginia is a better brand. But I personally don't think that's that big of a deal anymore. Let's go to reason number 2. I think West Virginia can win a national title or could win a national title similar to Indiana. I think Curt Cignetti and Rich Rodriguez are both cut from a similar cloth. They're both in the same age group, same age bracket, close to the same age, early to mid-60s. They're both old school style coaches who believe in hard work, dedication, discipline, a blue-collar work ethic, attention to detail, those types of things. They both believe culture is important. I mean, you hear some of the speeches Curt Cignetti has given over the time. You've heard Rich Rodriguez say similar things. Now, Rich Rod might say it in a little bit more colorful way or a different way because he's a West Virginia guy, whereas Curt Cignetti's, even though he's a West Virginia alum, he's originally from Pittsburgh, right? So their dialect is not exactly the same. But my point being, they both basically have the same philosophy to a degree. Now, do they run their practices the exact same way and all that? Probably not. Obviously, I've never been on the inside, so I can't tell. But just from a fan's perspective, it looks like they're both cut from the same cloth. And they're both going to build a culture and a program in a similar fashion. Now, again, I could be completely wrong there. That's just my opinion from a fan's perspective from the outside looking in. I think that's a good thing. Number 3 reason that West Virginia could win a national championship. What Indiana just did, they did it with they don't have or did not have a lot of 4- and 5-star players on their roster. I went to 24/7 Sports and I looked at their roster. When you looked at the transfer classes from 24 and 25, which was Curt Cignetti's first year and going into this year, they had a total of about 8. And even if you add in their high school classes, they had somewhere about 8 4-star guys on their roster. About 8. Now, if you do the math, I didn't look through West Virginia's entire roster, but if you do the math, it's probably somewhere in the same ballpark. Indiana also had a lot of guys from lower levels, like James Madison. He brought 12 guys from James Madison. James Madison, a team out of the Sun Belt, who was just an FCS program, 3-4 years ago? And they are now winning a national championship. So that negates the argument that getting guys from a lower level does not work. It can work. It's all about getting the right ones. That's what Curt Cignetti's done such a good job of, is picking out the right players, right? Can Rich Rod duplicate that? We'll see. But the both programs are forced based on history and based on the amount of NIL money they've had so far to get guys from a lower level. Now, that Indiana's has now become a national prominent brand, so their recruiting is going to improve. Simply because they won a national championship, they're probably going to get more money flowing in. Everything's going to be on the upswing now from that perspective. So that's where West Virginia's striving to be. But let's take a look even deeper at the transfer roster. I'm going to look at Curt Cignetti's first 2 years at Indiana. In 2024, this is all per 24/7 Sports, okay? In 2024, Curt Cignetti had 31 players transfer into the program at Indiana. And he had 39 players transfer out. It was a first year. They were doing a roster rebuild. A lot of the old players transferred out. That's expected. They brought in 31 players to replace them, along with some high school guys. West Virginia, in Rich Rod's first year, going into 2025, brought in 53 transfers and had 51 transfer out. So West Virginia lost 12 more transfers from the previous staff than Indiana did, even though Indiana had a worse record than West Virginia. So retention was an issue there. West Virginia, or Indiana rather, going into year 2 of Cignetti, had 23 transfers in, 27 transfers out. So it got better, right? They had a better retention going into year 2. Year 2 for Rich Rod going into next season. This is so far. They could still get some players out of the portal, but so far they've brought 33 transfers in, so 20 less because they added more high school guys. But they've had 50 transfer out compared to 51 a year ago. So they've lost just as many guys. Now, caveat is, majority of those guys were recruited by Neil Brown. It doesn't appear they were fits in the program. Rich Rod gave them a year. They didn't fit. Either they're moving on or he asked them to leave. There's been some of both. I think the majority of the players were asked to leave, with a handful of exceptions. So retention was a bigger issue for Rich Rod in year 2 than it was Cignetti, but here's a catch. I went further in my research and looked at when the transfers got to campus. When you look at Indiana, about 3/4 or close to 3/4, somewhere in the 70% range. I didn't do the exact math, but the majority of their transfers, let's just say majority, the majority of their transfers in both 2024 and 2025 were there for spring practice. That's how important it is. Think about that. Most of even though they had 31 guys transfer in, and then 23 in year 2, most of those guys were there for spring ball both years. Why do you think Rich Rod made that a focus this year? Because last year, I would say when you look at, they had 53 transfers in, about 30, more than half of those players didn't get to campus until summer. We're not able to participate in spring ball. This year, however, almost 3/4 of the players that are transferring into Morgantown are going to be there for spring practice. I think that's critical, and I think that is one reason why I think West Virginia is going to be better in 2026 than they were in 2025. I think us as fans might be underestimating the importance of those spring snaps, those spring practices, those summer workouts, the time spent bonding with their teammates, the time spent learning the system, the time spent being around the strength and conditioning coaches, being inside a weight training program at a Power 4 school for those guys coming from a lower level, the time spent around the nutrition program, getting their body where it needs to be. When you have an extra 3 to 4 months to do all of that, heck, it's more than that. Those guys are getting 6 months. They have a 6-month head start, basically, versus about half the guys that came in last year. Think about that. Yes, retention has been a little bit of an issue. Yes, it's fair to criticize that. Yes, money is a concern. West Virginia doesn't have as much NIL money as Indiana. But yet Indiana don't have as much NIL money as Miami, who they just beat, or Oregon, who they just beat, or a lot of other schools. But yet they went out and won a national championship. So what's my opinion? I do think West Virginia can win a national championship in today's era. I do. But I do think it's going to be tough. I think what Curt Cignetti in Indiana did, I'm not sure we'll see that a lot going forward. I think it's a little bit of an anomaly. Now, maybe I'm wrong. We might see more teams start rising up. I do think West Virginia can do it. But I think it'll be a harder road to hoe for them because of the financial gap they're facing, the lack of living alumni, lack of, the much fewer living alumni that they have compared to other schools like Indiana, for example, the lack of major donors. And I know a lot of people think I'm doom and gloom. I'm just looking at the facts. I'm laying the facts out. West Virginia has fewer mega donors than most of these other schools. The mega donors they have probably have less money than some of the mega donors at these other schools. They have fewer people who can and will donate to the university. Fan base is very passionate, but let's just face it. There's not as many of us as there are some of these other schools. And a lot of us aren't financially able to give a whole lot of money. So it is an uphill battle, but I think if Rich Rod gets the right guys in the program, gets the right staff put together, which I think he's done a pretty good job of, especially going into year two, especially with Rick Trickett coming back. I think with the right staff, the right player evaluations, the right level of development, spending money on the right guys, like Indiana, estimates are that Mendoza made a little over about $2.5 million in NIL. Pretty darn good. It's a lot of money. They will get that back and then some because of the national championship they just won. So if you can pay the right guys, get guys who fit into your system, who buy into your system, and who are coachable and are willing to be hard edge and can tolerate the hard edge culture, and who will stay, and you can get at least, ideally you don't want to lose more than about 20 to 25 players a year to the portal. If you can retain, what is that, 75, 80% of your roster every year going forward, I think West Virginia can compete and win a national championship. But it's going to be a very, very, very challenging uphill battle. It's possible, but unlikely. That's where I stand on it. It's not impossible. I think Indiana just proved it is possible. But the stars have to align. You have to be healthy. You have to stay healthy for the most part. You better get a good quarterback. Or you better get a great quarterback. You better have great coaching. And you better have the school, the athletic department, the coaching staff, the donors, everybody pulling the rope in the same direction, which Indiana, I think, has now. You have to have alignment. And I think West Virginia may have that for the first time, maybe ever, at least in my lifetime. It seems to me like they now have alignment between the board, the president, the athletic director, and the coaching staff, the coaches. I'm not sure they've had that in my lifetime, to be perfectly honest. And it's also throw in, I think they also have the state of West Virginia legislature on their side as well to help them navigate through this mess the best they can. I think you have everybody in alignment. I think that bodes well for the Mountaineers. The problem is it too late? I'm not sure. As fast as things are moving in college football, with the SEC and folks talking about potentially separating, is it too late? I don't know. I don't think it is. I think West Virginia can compete for a national championship by 2028, 2029. That 5-year window Rich Rod gave, he said in 5 years, West Virginia will be playing for a national championship. I think he can do it. I think he can do it, and I think Curt Cignetti has showed us the model. Get veteran players, retain most of those veteran players, get a great quarterback, build a great culture, and you can do it. I think it can be done. But we have to do our part as fans, the ones who are able to give. We have to give. We have to buy season tickets if we can afford it. We have to go to games when we can, and when it's feasible. Buy the merch when it's feasible. But in 5 years, I do think West Virginia can compete for a national championship. It ain't going to be overnight like Indiana did it, because West Virginia's, I think, starting at a little bit lower point financially. And it took them a few years to get everybody pulling the rope in the same direction, to get the right board members in place, get the right president in place, and all that. The AD, the Rim Baker now being in there. I think Indiana had all that in place sooner. So they're a couple of years ahead of West Virginia. But that being said, it's possible. But I want to know what you think in the comment section. Is it possible for West Virginia to compete for a national title in today's landscape, in today's era of NIL, the transfer portal, and money being such a huge factor? I want to hear your thoughts right now. Also, please don't forget to hit the like button. It's free. It's a thumbs up button right below the video. Please hit it. I want to give a quick shout to my paid VIP members of this episode. These are the random shout outs. It goes to James Buchanan, Brian Siders, Susan Ross, Kevin Varney, Shannon Miller. Thank you all for being paid VIP members. If you want to be a paid VIP member, you can hit the join button below the video. There's a $4.99 a month level and a $2.99 a month level. Random shout outs go to everyone. The $4.99 level also includes some special members only content on occasion, as well as some early access to some content on occasion. Choose whichever level you want. It's both are easy ways to support what I do and help me keep the lights on here at Couz's Corner. Also, don't forget about our website, wvsportschat.com, where it's the written side of the house. Go check it out. We have several writers doing work over there. It's kind of a slow time right now, but we do have articles up that you can read that are recent. Go check it out, wvsportschat.com today. Thanks to the Rogue Sports Network for allowing me to be a part of their family. I really appreciate you tuning into this episode. Hope the rest of your day is top shelf. God bless you. And cue Country Roads.